And Mercedes, I do want to start with
Sure.
you. What are you expecting from the Supreme Court on this ballot issue?
Well, it's actually very vital for the Supreme Court to step in because you have so many states that are doing various things. And it is a constitutional issue because you look at the third section of the 14th Amendment. If you read it, it says very clearly that if you have engaged in a rebellion or an insurrection, you cannot hold office. So if the Supreme Court, which are made of most of strict constructionists because they are constitutional conservatives, and they look at the letter of the law as it is detailed, they're not going to look at the fact that historically that third section was to prohibit Confederate politicians, it came up after the Civil War, to hold office. These strict constructionist jurists do not look at the underlying intent. Rather, they look at the law itself. So if they do follow what their conservative ideals are and their conservative thinking and their conservative approach to any type of challenge when it comes to the Constitution, they'll look at the letter of the law, and it says clearly that if you have engaged in this type of conduct, you cannot hold office.
Well, and staying with you, Mercedes, for a moment, if the Supreme Court does not side with Colorado and Maine, what will that mean for the 14th Amendment?
Well, that's a great question because it really will be, it may be that the Supreme Court will decide that this really is about each state determining what the ballot should look like because there's a two-step approach to this analysis. First, you look at the constitutional issue, whether or not former President Trump had engaged in the type of conduct that is prohibitive for him to have to be actually on the ballot and hold office. That's the first step of the analysis. The second step, which is why you have a lot of the secretaries stepping forward, the electorals actually stepping forward and saying, we have local election laws. Then in order for you to hold office, you have to be fit for office. So not only it is a constitutional analysis, you also have to look at the local statutes themselves. So if the Supreme Court decides that this is going to be a state-by-state decision, because you have the local laws that are coming into play as well, not just the interpretation of the 14th Amendment in Section 3, you will have, unfortunately, states deciding one way or the other. So there might be states, there might be ballots where former President Trump is removed, and there might be those that will be included. So it really will just depend on the Supreme Court and what they end up deciding. But one thing's for certain, time is of the essence. A lot of these states have the ballots have to be finalized and formalized in Q1 of 2024, which means that the U.S. Supreme Court has to make a decision in early spring.
Yeah, and Mercedes, there's this really interesting issue as well I want to get to in just a moment where Biden's name might potentially be removed from the ballot in Texas. Let's talk about that in a second.
Sure.
But Kevin, I want to bring you in here. We do see some Democrats saying that Trump should be allowed to stay, should be allowed on the ballots. Representative Jared Golden of Maine, just one of them, stressing that until Trump is actually found guilty of an insurrection, he should not be disqualified. What are you seeing from Democrats on all of this?
They think that the people should decide. I mean, think about the precedent. Let's remove for a second the names Donald Trump and President Biden. And let's play this forward a decade from now, where then what essentially the precedent that this would set is that each state's Supreme Court or the highest court in the state would have more power than the voters in terms of who to elect. So there's this constitutionality argument. There's also this political argument about who do we want picking the nominees. You know, one could argue that political parties in this country have way too much power to begin with. But now you're essentially saying that some judges in 50 states are going to have even more power. But let's bring it back to politics for a second, because there's two quick points that I would make here. Maine matters. I've been hearing a lot of rumblings in the inside of the Beltway saying, well, Maine's only 4 electoral votes. Well, Maine is also one of 2 states which is not, emphasis on not, winner take all in the Electoral College, where you need 270 votes to win. So if a candidate, i.e. Trump, is able to pick up 1 Electoral College vote in a general election, that essentially could decide the election. So, folks who are saying, "Oh, Maine's so small, it doesn't matter," they're mistaken. The other state being Nebraska. But then, secondly, from that, there's always a write-in campaign. And so my sources on the Trump campaign in 2024 are noting that they feel he has name recognition, and they're planning for there to be a write-in campaign should the Supreme Court not rule in their favor. But they also are anticipating that as a worst-case scenario, and that the court will rule in their favor.
Yeah, Kevin, that's a really interesting point. And Mercedes, in just about 30 seconds that we have left here, let's talk about Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick this week threatening to remove Biden's name from the ballot over the border crisis there. Could we actually see that kind of push in southern states going forward, or is this more of an empty threat legally?
That's an excellent question. It certainly sounds like an empty threat, because if you look at just the statute itself, it doesn't talk about whether you have effectuated your duties in office. It talks about actually participating in insurrection or rebellion. So to your point, Natasha, it's likely this is just a political play, and hopefully other states, if they do this type of conduct and they pursue these types of litigation, will at least have some judge come in, step in and say that's just not applicable here and move on.
Okay. Mercedes, Colwin, Kevin Cirilli, thank you both. Happy New Year to you. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.